The midnight air clung to the stone walls of Thornwick Manor like a shroud. Rain lashed against leaded windows, each droplet racing down the glass as if fleeing some unseen horror. Inside, Eliza Blackwood moved silently through the candlelit corridors, her shadow dancing grotesquely against the faded damask wallpaper. The silver serving tray in her hands reflected the trembling flame of her candle, distorting her already gaunt features. At 23, Eliza carried herself with the worn dignity of someone much older. 6 years of service had etched permanent shadows beneath her dark eyes. Her black hair, severely pulled back from her pale face, accentuated the hollow of her cheeks. She was a ghost among ghosts in this ancient house, present but unseen, essential yet invisible. Tonight, something felt different. The air seemed heavier, charged with an electricity that made the fine hairs on her arms stand on end. The manor's usual creaks and sighs had fallen silent, as if the very house were holding its breath in anticipation. Eliza paused outside the door to Lady Rosalind Thornwick's bedchamber. From within came the melodic sound of her mistress's voice, though no other voice answered. Lady Rosalind often spoke to herself, or perhaps to the portraits of ancestors that lined the walls, their eyes following servants as they passed. Eliza had grown accustomed to her mistress's peculiarities over the years. The unexplained disappearances for days at a time, the bizarre dietary restrictions, the insistence that all mirrors be covered during the new moon. "Enter!" Lady Rosalind called before Eliza's knuckles could touch the wood. The bedchamber was a symphony of crimson and shadow. Heavy velvet curtains obscured the windows, defying any moonlight that might dare to penetrate. Candelabras stood at irregular intervals, their flames dancing wildly despite the absence of a breeze. And there, seated at her writing desk, was Lady Rosalind. Even after 6 years, the sight of her mistress still made Eliza's breath catch. Lady Rosalind appeared no older than 30, though rumours in the village placed her age closer to 40. Her copper hair cascaded in loose waves down her back, contrasting with skin so pale it seemed translucent. When she turned to acknowledge Eliza, her green eyes caught the candlelight in a way that made them appear to glow from within. "Your evening tea, my lady," Eliza said, placing the tray on the small table beside the chaise lounge. Lady Rosalind smiled, revealing teeth that seemed unnaturally white in the dim light. "You're a treasure, Eliza. While the other servants scurry off to their quarters at the first rumble of thunder, you remain steadfast. It's my duty, my lady. Is it merely duty that keeps you by my side?" Lady Rosalind rose from her desk in one fluid motion, her silk dressing gown whispering across the floor as she approached. "Or is it something else? Curiosity, perhaps?" Eliza lowered her eyes, focusing on the pattern of the Persian rug beneath their feet. "I wouldn't presume." "Of course you wouldn't." Lady Rosalind reached out, her fingers cool as they tilted Eliza's chin upward. "That's what makes you special. You observe, you wonder, but you never presume." For a moment they stood in silence, the space between them charged with unspoken questions. Lady Rosalind's eyes seemed to search for something in Eliza's face, travelling across every feature with an intensity that made the maid's cheeks flush. The tension broke when Lady Rosalind withdrew her hand. "I received a letter today." She moved to the window, parting the curtains just enough to reveal the storm-ravaged night. "Lord Edmund Blackthorne will be paying us a visit tomorrow evening." Eliza's heart sank. Lord Blackthorne's visits always left Lady Rosalind in a state of agitation that would persist for days afterward. Though Eliza had seen him only once, a tall figure with eyes like frozen steel, she harboured an instinctive distrust of the man. "Shall I prepare the East Wing guest chamber?" Eliza asked, though she already knew the answer. "Yes." Lady Rosalind's voice had hardened. "And have cook prepare a special dinner. Lord Blackthorne has particular tastes." "Of course, my lady." Eliza curtsied and turned to leave, but Lady Rosalind's voice stopped her. "Eliza, be cautious around him. Do not find yourself alone in his presence. The warning sent a chill down Eliza's spine. Yes, my lady. As she closed the door behind her, Eliza could have sworn she heard Lady Rosalind whisper, "I cannot lose you too." The following day brought clear skies that belied the tension filling Thornwick Manor. Eliza moved through her duties mechanically, her mind occupied with Lady Rosalind's warning. The other servants seemed oblivious to the looming dread, chattering excitedly about the rare appearance of nobility at their isolated estate. "I heard he's a widower," said Mary, the kitchen maid, as she polished silver that hadn't seen use in years. "Filthy rich with an estate twice the size of Thornwick." "And half as old," added Thomas, the groundskeeper's son. "Built it with blood money from the colonies, my father says." Eliza remained silent, focusing on arranging roses in a crystal vase. The blooms were deep red, almost black in the center, grown in Lady Rosalind's private greenhouse. Their fragrance was intoxicating, sweet yet with an underlying earthiness that reminded Eliza of freshly dug soil. "What do you know of him, Eliza?" Mary prompted. "You've been here longer than any of us." "Very little," Eliza replied truthfully. "He visits rarely, and Lady Rosalind never discusses their association." "Well, I heard they were betrothed once," Mary continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Years ago, before she inherited Thornwick. Something happened, something scandalous, and she broke it off. They say he's never forgiven her," Thomas snorted. "If that were true, why would he keep visiting?" "Perhaps to remind her of what she lost," Mary suggested with a dramatic sigh. Eliza turned away, disguising her unease as disinterest in servant gossip. The roses seemed to wilt slightly under her touch, as if sensing her disquiet. By late afternoon, the manor had been transformed. Candles illuminated every corner, their glow casting warm light on polished wood and brass fixtures. The dining room table gleamed beneath a pristine white cloth, set with the finest china and crystal. Lady Rosalind had requested that the portraits in the main hall be covered, a strange request that fueled whispered speculation among the staff. As dusk approached, Eliza helped Lady Rosalind prepare for her guest. The gown chosen for the evening was a deep emerald that made her mistress's eyes appear even more vividly green. As Eliza fastened the long row of tiny buttons up the back, she noticed Lady Rosalind's hands trembling slightly. "Are you unwell, my lady?" Eliza asked gently. Lady Rosalind's eyes met hers in the mirror. "I'm afraid, Eliza." The admission, so vulnerable and honest, caught Eliza off guard. "Of Lord Blackthorn. Of what he represents." Lady Rosalind turned, taking Eliza's hands in her own. "Listen carefully. If anything happens to me tonight, you must flee Thornwick immediately. Take the hidden path through the east garden, past the mausoleum. Do not stop until you reach the village." Alarm surged through Eliza. "My lady, surely you don't think—" "Promise me." Lady Rosalind's grip tightened almost painfully. "I promise," Eliza whispered, though her mind rebelled against the very thought of abandoning her mistress. Lady Rosalind released her and turned back to the mirror. "Good. Now help me with my jewellery. I shall wear the ruby pendant tonight." The ruby pendant, a blood-red stone set in tarnished silver, was kept in a locked box that Lady Rosalind wore the key for around her neck. Eliza had never seen her wear it before, though sometimes at night she had glimpsed her mistress holding it to the candlelight, watching the red reflections dance across the walls. When Lord Edmund Blackthorn arrived precisely at 8 o'clock, Eliza was positioned in the shadows of the grand entrance hall. He stepped into Thornwick Manor like a man claiming his rightful property, his black greatcoat still dotted with raindrops that glittered in the candlelight. Though his hair had gone silver at the temples, his face remained youthful, almost unnaturally so. When he smiled at Lady Rosalind, Eliza noticed that his canine teeth seemed slightly too sharp. "Rosalind," he said, his voice resonating through the hall, "you grow more beautiful with each passing year. One might suspect supernatural intervention." "Edmund," Lady Rosalind's voice was cool, controlled. "You're as charming as ever. Please come in." Dinner awaits. Eliza withdrew to the servants' corridor, her heart pounding inexplicably. There was something in the way Lord Blackthorne looked at Lady Rosalind, not with love or even desire, but with the calculated patience of a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The dinner service proceeded without incident, though Eliza noticed that neither Lady Rosalind nor Lord Blackthorne ate more than a few bites of the carefully prepared meal. Instead, they sipped red wine from crystal goblets, their conversation too low for the servants to overhear. Only once did Eliza catch a fragment when she approached to refill their glasses. "Cannot run forever, Rosalind," Lord Blackthorne was saying, his fingers brushing against Lady Rosalind's wrist. "The council's patience wears thin." "I've broken no laws," Lady Rosalind replied, withdrawing her hand. "My choices are my own." "Are they?" His smile did not reach his eyes. "We both know what happens to those who defy tradition." After dinner, they retired to the library, requesting privacy. The other servants were dismissed for the evening, but Eliza lingered in the adjacent room, organizing linens that needed no organizing. Through the wall she could hear their voices rising, though the thick stone muffled the actual words. An hour passed, then two. The house grew still around her, the other servants long since retired to their quarters. Just as Eliza was about to abandon her vigil, the library door flew open. Lady Rosalind emerged, her face ashen. "Eliza," she gasped, clearly startled to find the maid still awake. "You should be in bed." "I was concerned, my lady," Eliza admitted. Lady Rosalind glanced back toward the library, then grabbed Eliza's arm. "Come with me, quickly." They hurried through the corridors toward Lady Rosalind's bedchamber. Once inside, Lady Rosalind locked the door and moved to her writing desk. She pulled out a small key from her bodice, different from the one that opened her jewelry box, and unlocked a hidden drawer. "Take this," she said, pressing a small leather-bound book into Eliza's hands. "If I am not here in the morning, this will explain everything, but you must promise me you won't open it unless necessary." "My lady, you're frightening me," Eliza whispered. Lady Rosalind's eyes softened. She reached out to touch Eliza's cheek. "Dear, loyal Eliza. In another life, perhaps." She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. "Go now. Lock your door and open it for no one but me." Reluctantly, Eliza obeyed, though every instinct screamed at her to stay. The book felt unnaturally heavy in her hands as she made her way to her small room in the servants' quarters. Once inside, she placed it under her pillow and sat on the edge of her bed, fully dressed, waiting. The grandfather clock in the hall struck midnight, its chimes echoing through the silent house. Then 1 o'clock. 2. Eliza's eyelids grew heavy despite her determination to remain awake. Just as she was about to succumb to exhaustion, a sound jolted her back to full alertness. A scream, high and terrified, cut through the night. Lady Rosalind's scream. Without hesitation, Eliza flew from her room, the book forgotten beneath her pillow. She raced through the darkened corridors, guided more by instinct than sight. The scream had come from the library. As she approached, she could hear voices. Lady Rosalind's pleading and Lord Blackthorne's, cold and unyielding. "You cannot escape your nature forever, Rosalind. The hunger will consume you eventually. I would rather die than become like you." "That can be arranged, my dear. But first, the pendant." Eliza burst through the door without thinking. The scene before her froze her in place. Lady Rosalind backed against a bookshelf, the ruby pendant clutched protectively in her hand. Lord Blackthorne looming over her, his face transformed by rage into something inhuman. Eyes glowing red, teeth elongated into fangs. "Leave her alone!" Eliza cried, grabbing a heavy brass candlestick from a nearby table. Both figures turned to her, surprise momentarily replacing the tension between them. Then Lord Blackthorne smiled, a terrifying sight with his extended fangs. "How touching! Your pet human comes to your rescue, Rosalind." He took a step toward Eliza. "Tell me, girl, do you know what your mistress truly is?" "Don't," Lady Rosalind warned, her voice desperate. "Eliza, run!" but Eliza stood her ground, candlestick raised. "I won't leave you." Lord Blackthorn's smile widened. Such devotion. It would be admirable if it weren't so foolish. In a movement too swift for human eyes to track, he was suddenly beside Eliza, plucking the candlestick from her grasp as if taking a toy from a child. Perhaps a demonstration will convince Rosalind of the futility of her rebellion. What happened next occurred in heartbeats, yet seemed to stretch into eternity. Lord Blackthorn produced a silver dagger from within his coat. He turned toward Lady Rosalind, arm raised to strike. Eliza, moving on pure instinct, threw herself forward. There was a blinding pain as the blade meant for her mistress plunged into her chest instead. Warmth spread across her bodice, and the metallic scent of blood filled her nostrils. Lady Rosalind's scream seemed to come from very far away. Eliza felt herself falling, the world tilting sideways. Strong arms caught her before she hit the floor. Through dimming vision, she saw Lady Rosalind's face above her, contorted in anguish. "No, no, Eliza, stay with me," her mistress begged, pressing her hands against the wound in a futile attempt to stem the flowing blood. Lord Blackthorn stood watching, the bloody dagger still in his hand. "How unfortunate! I had no quarrel with the maid." "You've killed her," Lady Rosalind sobbed, cradling Eliza against her chest. "You monster!" "She's not dead yet," he observed clinically, "though she will be in moments. Unless—" Eliza's consciousness was fading, the library around her growing dim. Lady Rosalind's tearful face was the only clear thing remaining in her vision. She wanted to tell her mistress not to cry, that she didn't regret her choice, but her lips would not form the words. The last thing Eliza heard before darkness claimed her was Lady Rosalind's voice, thick with both grief and sudden determination. "I can save her, but everything will change." Then a sharp pain at her throat, different from the agony in her chest, followed by the coppery taste of blood on her lips. And after that, nothing but an endless velvet darkness that seemed to both consume and transform her very essence. Part 2. Eliza awoke to darkness. Not the comforting darkness of sleep, but a crushing void that seemed to press against her from all directions. Panic seized her as she gasped for breath, only to realize with horrifying clarity that she had no need for air. Her lungs remained still in her chest, yet she felt no discomfort. "Be calm," Lady Rosalind's voice came from somewhere nearby, soft and melodic. The transition is always difficult. Gradually the darkness receded. Eliza blinked, and suddenly the world burst into her consciousness with painful intensity. The library's dim candlelight now seemed as bright as midday sun. The subtle scent of old books and wood polish became an overwhelming barrage of information. Leather, ink, dust, blood. Even the silence of the room was filled with sounds she'd never noticed before. The subtle creaking of the manor settling, the skittering of mice in the walls, and most disturbingly, the distant heartbeats of sleeping servants. "What's happening to me?" Eliza whispered, startled by how different her own voice sounded to her ears, richer, more resonant. Lady Rosalind appeared in her field of vision, kneeling beside the chaise longue, where Eliza now realized she was lying. Her mistress's face was tear-stained, yet her green eyes held both sorrow and fierce determination. "I had no choice," Lady Rosalind said, taking Eliza's hands in hers. "You were dying. I couldn't let you go." Memory returned in a violent rush. Lord Blackthorn, the dagger, the blinding pain. Instinctively, Eliza's hand flew to her chest where the blade had penetrated. Instead of a wound, she felt only smooth skin beneath the torn, bloodied fabric of her dress. "I don't understand," she murmured, though a terrible suspicion was already forming in her mind. "Look at me, Eliza," Lady Rosalind commanded gently. "What do you see?" For the first time, Eliza truly looked at her mistress with her newly enhanced senses. Lady Rosalind's beauty, always striking, now revealed subtle details invisible to human eyes, the complete absence of lines that even the youngest faces carried, the unnatural stillness when she wasn't deliberately moving, and most tellingly, the lack of breath or heartbeat. "You're not human," Eliza whispered. A sad smile touched Lady Rosalind's lips. "No, I haven't been human for almost 2 centuries. And now, neither am I. I've given you my blood, the blood of the Thornwick line. You are reborn as something both more and less than human." Lady Rosalind's fingers tightened around Eliza's. "I never wanted this for you. You must believe that." Before Eliza could respond, the library door flew open. Lord Blackthorne stood in the threshold, his tall figure silhouetted against the corridor's darkness. The sight of him sent a surge of primal rage through Eliza, so powerful it physically lifted her from the chaise longue. A snarl tore from her throat, feral and inhuman. "Fascinating," Lord Blackthorne remarked, unmoved by her display. "She transitions quickly, strong will." Lady Rosalind moved to stand between them. "You've done enough damage, Edmund. Leave us." "I think not." He stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind him. "You've transformed a human without council approval. That alone is punishable by final death. But more importantly," his eyes fixed on the ruby pendant now hanging around Eliza's neck, placed there by Lady Rosalind while she was unconscious, "you've complicated matters considerably." With disorienting speed, Eliza found herself pinned against the wall, Lord Blackthorne's hand at her throat. Up close, his features seemed even less human, his skin too smooth, his eyes holding centuries of calculated cruelty. "The council sent me to retrieve what Rosalind stole," he hissed, his face inches from hers. "I had no intention of harming you, but now you've become an inconvenience." "Release her!" Lady Rosalind's voice cracked like a whip. She held a strange, ornate dagger Eliza had never seen before. Not the silver one that had pierced her chest, but an older weapon with symbols etched into its blade. "I know how to use this, Edmund. One strike to separate your head from your shoulders." Lord Blackthorne's grip loosened, though he didn't completely release Eliza. "You would risk everything for this servant? Think carefully, Rosalind. The council already questions your loyalty. This will confirm their suspicions." "Perhaps it's time they questioned their own authority instead," Lady Rosalind replied, her voice dangerously soft. 50 years I've kept their secrets. 50 years I've abided by their rules. But no more." A tense silence filled the room. Eliza remained perfectly still, aware that she had become the center of a conflict she didn't understand. The ruby pendant felt unnaturally heavy against her chest, pulsing with a warmth that seemed to reach into her very core. Finally, Lord Blackthorne released her with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "You've made your choice, then. The council will hear of this betrayal." "Yes, they will," Lady Rosalind agreed, "but not from you." What happened next was too fast for even Eliza's enhanced senses to fully register. Lady Rosalind moved with preternatural speed, the ancient dagger flashing in the candlelight. Lord Blackthorne countered, his movements equally swift. They became blurs of motion. The sounds of their conflict reduced to subtle shifts in the air and occasional crashes as furniture splintered beneath their strength. Eliza pressed herself against the bookshelf, watching in horror and fascination as 2 immortals battled before her. This was a side of Lady Rosalind she'd never glimpsed, fierce, predatory, her genteel demeanor replaced by the calculating precision of a natural hunter. The fight ended as abruptly as it had begun. Lady Rosalind stood over Lord Blackthorne, who was on his knees, the dagger pressed against his throat. A thin line of dark blood, almost black in the candlelight, trickled from where the blade bit into his skin. "You won't do it," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "You haven't taken a life in over a century, Rosalind. Your hands tremble even now." "You're right," she admitted. "I won't kill you." She withdrew the dagger slightly. "But I will ensure you cannot follow us." Before Lord Blackthorne could respond, Lady Rosalind plunged the dagger into his shoulder, pinning him to the heavy oak desk behind him. His scream was more rage than pain, cut short when she pressed something against his lips, a small vial of clear liquid that made his body go rigid. "Essence of white ash," she explained to Eliza as she backed away from the paralyzed vampire. Temporary, but it will give us time to flee. She grabbed Eliza's hand. We must leave immediately. Can you walk? Eliza nodded, though she felt strangely disconnected from her own body. Every movement seemed both easier and more difficult than before. Easier because of the unnatural strength flowing through her limbs. More difficult because she hadn't yet learned to moderate that strength. What about the others? She asked, as Lady Rosalind led her swiftly through the darkened corridors of Thornwick Manor. Mary, Thomas, Cook, we can't just leave them. They'll be safer without us here, Lady Rosalind replied grimly. Edmund won't harm them. They're of no value to him. His quarrel is with me, and now with you. They reached Lady Rosalind's chambers, where she quickly gathered a few items into a small leather satchel, the journal she'd given Eliza earlier, now retrieved from the maid's room, a velvet pouch that clinked with the sound of coins, and several small vials similar to the one she'd used on Lord Blackthorn. We'll take the secret passage to the mausoleum, she said, moving to a section of panelled wall that, to Eliza's enhanced vision, showed subtle signs of recent use. From there, we can reach the village before dawn. And then what? Eliza asked, the reality of their situation finally penetrating the fog of confusion surrounding her transformation. Where can we go that he won't find us? Lady Rosalind paused, her hand on the hidden latch. In the candlelight, her face showed a vulnerability Eliza had rarely witnessed. To the only place that might offer sanctuary, the home of an old friend. Someone who owes me a life debt. The hidden passage was narrow and damp, smelling of earth and decay. Eliza followed Lady Rosalind through the darkness, no longer needing light to see the rough stone walls or the occasional skittering rat. What should have been terrifying now seemed merely informative, her senses cataloguing details with cold precision. You have questions, Lady Rosalind said as they descended deeper beneath the manor. I can feel your confusion. Dozens, Eliza admitted, but perhaps the most pressing is, what am I now? Lady Rosalind's laugh held no humour. You've guessed already, I think. The legends have many names for us. Vampire, Strigoi, Nosferatu. We are the immortal, the bloodbound. Humans who have died and been reborn through the blood of our kind. And the Council, Lord Blackthorn mentioned them. The Eternal Council, 7 of the oldest of our kind, who believe they have the right to govern all others. They dictate who may be transformed, who may feed and where. A note of bitterness entered her voice. They claim to protect both our kind and humanity, but in truth they protect only their own power. They reached a heavy iron door that Lady Rosalind opened with a key produced from her bodice. Beyond lay the Thornwick Mausoleum, a circular chamber with stone sarcophagi arranged like the spokes of a wheel. At the center stood a marble pedestal bearing the family crest, a thorn bush entangling a human heart. And the pendant? Eliza asked, touching the ruby that still felt unnaturally warm against her skin. Lady Rosalind hesitated before answering. That is a longer story, one best told when we're safely away from here. For now, understand only that it contains power the Council covets and fears. They passed through the mausoleum and exited through a small door that led to the cemetery beyond. The night sky stretched above them, brilliant with stars that Eliza could now see with astonishing clarity. The beauty of it momentarily took her breath away, or would have, had she still needed to breathe. Everything feels different, she whispered, gazing up at the heavens. More intense, more real, Lady Rosalind finished for her. Yes, human senses perceive but a shadow of the world. This is both our blessing and our curse. To see too much, feel too much. They moved through the night with inhuman speed, crossing the grounds of Thornwick Manor and entering the forest beyond. Eliza found herself running alongside Lady Rosalind without effort, her feet barely seeming to touch the ground. Trees blurred past them, yet she could distinguish individual leaves, count the stripes on a startled badger that froze at their passing. As they neared the village, however, a new sensation overcame Eliza, a gnawing emptiness that started in her stomach and quickly spread throughout her body. Her steps faltered as an overwhelming hunger clawed at her insides. "My lady," she gasped, doubling over. "I feel strange." Lady Rosalind was at her side instantly, steadying her. "The blood hunger," she said grimly. "I'd hoped it wouldn't come so soon. The first time is always the most difficult to control." "Blood," Eliza repeated, the word suddenly taking on new meaning. She could hear it now, the rhythmic pulse of life in every living creature around them. A fox in its den, a night bird on a branch, and most temptingly, the distant heartbeats of humans in the village beyond the trees. "I need not human blood," Lady Rosalind said firmly, guiding Eliza to sit on a fallen log. "Not yet. You're too new, too uncontrolled. You would kill without meaning to." From her satchel, she withdrew a small silver flask. "This will sustain you temporarily. It's not pleasant the first time, but you must drink." Eliza took the flask with trembling hands. The moment she unscrewed the cap, the scent hit her, rich, metallic, intoxicating. Despite Lady Rosalind's warning, she drank greedily, instinct overwhelming reason. The liquid was cold and viscous, nothing like how she would have imagined blood to taste as a human. Now it was ambrosia, filling the emptiness inside her with a warmth that spread to her fingertips. Only when the flask was empty did awareness return. Eliza stared at the container in horror, realization dawning. "This is animal blood," Lady Rosalind confirmed, "collected from the butcher in the village. It will sustain you, though not as completely as—" She didn't finish the thought. "As human blood," Eliza completed, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. "Will I always crave it this way?" "The hunger never truly leaves us," Lady Rosalind admitted, "but it can be managed, controlled. I've existed for decades at a time without taking human blood. Is that why Lord Blackthorne said you were denying your nature?" A shadow passed over Lady Rosalind's face. "Edmund and I have fundamental disagreements about what our existence should mean. He embraces the predator within. I fight against it." She took the empty flask from Eliza's hands. "We should continue. Dawn is still hours away, but we must reach sanctuary before then." As they approached the outskirts of the village, they slowed to a human pace. The streets were deserted at this hour, windows dark except for the occasional glimmer of a night candle. Eliza felt a strange disconnection walking through the familiar lanes. These were the same cobblestones she had trod upon for years during her half-days off, yet now she felt like an intruder, a wolf among the sheep. "We're not staying in the village?" she asked as they passed the small inn where travellers occasionally lodged. "No, we need transportation." Lady Rosalind led them toward the stables at the edge of the village. "Thomas Blake owes me several favours. He'll ask no questions when I request his fastest horses." The stablemaster indeed asked no questions, though his eyes widened at the sight of Lady Rosalind appearing at his door well past midnight, accompanied by her lady's maid. A generous purse of gold coins further discouraged curiosity. Within half an hour they were mounted and riding east, away from Thornwick Manor and the rising sun. As they crested a hill, Eliza turned to look back at the only home she had known for 6 years. In the distance, Thornwick Manor stood silhouetted against the night sky, its Gothic towers reaching toward the stars like grasping fingers. "Will we ever return?" she asked softly. Lady Rosalind's expression was unreadable. "Perhaps. But if we do, it will not be as mistress and maid. What will we be to each other now?" The question escaped before Eliza could consider its impropriety. For a long moment, Lady Rosalind was silent, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. When she finally spoke, her voice held a complexity of emotion that Eliza's newly enhanced senses could only begin to decipher. "In the world of the immortal, there are makers and their progeny. I have given you my blood, my lineage. You are bound to me now in ways even I don't fully understand." She turned to meet Eliza's gaze. "But what that means for us, what we become to each other, that choice remains ours to make." The implications hung in the air between them as they rode through the darkness. Eliza felt the weight of the ruby pendant against her chest, pulsing in rhythm with emotions she could not yet name. Behind them, Thornwick Manor held its secrets. Ahead, an unknown future beckoned. And somewhere in the night, Lord Blackthorn was surely already in pursuit, his rage as immortal as the beings who had provoked it. Dawn was approaching when they reached a crossroads marked by an ancient standing stone. Lady Rosalind reined in her horse, staring at the stone with evident unease. "We must choose our path carefully," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Edmund will expect us to continue east toward London. The south leads to ports where we might find passage to the continent." "And the north?" Eliza asked, noting how Lady Rosalind's gaze lingered in that direction. "The north leads to the old places, lands where our kind walked long before the council formed, places of power and danger." She touched the ruby pendant around Eliza's neck. "The answers we seek may lie there, but so do ancient enemies who would destroy us both for what you now carry." A distant howl pierced the night, too deep, too purposeful to be a natural wolf. Lady Rosalind's expression hardened. "He's released the bloodhounds," she said, fear and determination mingling in her voice. "We have less time than I thought." "What are?" "Creatures bound to our kind, neither human nor animal. They hunt by the scent of our essence." Lady Rosalind spurred her horse toward the northern path. "We ride hard now. Dawn approaches, and we must find shelter before the sun claims us." As they galloped away from the crossroads, Eliza felt a strange certainty settle over her. Her human life had ended with Lord Blackthorn's dagger, but something new had begun. Something simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. The ruby pendant bounced against her chest with each stride of her horse, its warmth a constant reminder of the mysteries yet to be revealed. Behind them, more howls joined the first, closer now. And in the east, the faintest lightening of the sky heralded the coming dawn, a beauty Eliza would never again be able to face directly, yet another sacrifice in the price of immortality. The forest thickened as they rode northward, ancient oaks and towering pines creating a canopy that blotted out the stars. The howls of the bloodhounds grew more distant, but Eliza knew it was only temporary. Creatures that hunted by essence rather than scent would not be deterred by running water or false trails. "We need to find shelter," Lady Rosalind called over her shoulder, her voice tight with urgency. "The sun rises in less than an hour." Eliza felt no fatigue from their journey, another reminder of her transformed state. But she sensed a growing heaviness in her limbs, a primal warning that daylight would bring something worse than mere discomfort. "What happens if the sun finds us?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "For one as newly turned as you, agony, then death," Lady Rosalind replied, without softening the truth. "I might survive brief exposure, but it would weaken me considerably." They crested a hill, and Lady Rosalind reined her horse to an abrupt halt. Before them stretched a valley shrouded in mist, and at its center stood a structure that made Eliza's breath catch. Not a building precisely, but a ring of towering stones, similar to the one they'd passed at the crossroads, only vastly larger. Even from this distance, Eliza could sense something emanating from the stone circle, a vibration that seemed to resonate with the ruby pendant against her chest. "The Blackwood stones," Lady Rosalind whispered, a mixture of reverence and dread in her voice. "I didn't realize we'd come so far north already. You know this place?" "I was born near here, in my human life." Lady Rosalind's eyes reflected the fading starlight. The locals avoided the stones even then. They said the place belonged to the Old Ones, beings that walked before humans claimed the land. A sound from behind them, the distant baying of the bloodhounds, closer now, made the decision for them. They urged their tired horses down the slope toward the stone circle. As they approached, Eliza felt the pendant grow warmer, almost uncomfortably so. The massive stones, each easily 20 feet tall, were arranged in a perfect circle, with a flat altar stone at the center. Ancient symbols, similar to those on the dagger Lady Rosalind had used against Lord Blackthorn, were carved into each monolith. There, Lady Rosalind pointed to a dark opening at the base of the hill upon which the stone circle sat. A cave. It will shield us from the sun. They dismounted, leading their exhausted horses toward the cave entrance. The opening was narrow, but widened into a substantial chamber beyond. The air inside was surprisingly dry and carried a strange scent, something mineral yet organic, like blood mixed with crushed gemstones. "We should be safe here until nightfall," Lady Rosalind said, removing her cloak and laying it on the smooth stone floor. "The horses need rest as well." Eliza ventured deeper into the cave, while Lady Rosalind tended to the animals. Her new vision allowed her to see perfectly in the darkness, revealing that the cave extended much further than initially apparent. The walls were not natural, but carved, decorated with spiraling patterns that seemed to draw the eye inward. "Lady Rosalind," she called, her voice echoing strangely, "I think there's something you should see." "Just Rosalind now, Eliza," her former mistress corrected gently as she joined her. "The relationship between us has changed irrevocably." When she saw what Eliza had discovered, Rosalind fell silent. The cave opened into a circular chamber, and on its walls were paintings, not crude markings, but detailed images that seemed to glow with an inner light. They depicted figures that were almost human, but not quite, with elongated limbs and features too perfect to be natural. Between these figures flowed rivers of what could only be blood, connecting them in complex patterns. And at the center of the largest wall, unmistakable in its rendering, was an image of the ruby pendant, the very one that now hung around Eliza's neck. "What is this place?" Eliza whispered, her fingers unconsciously rising to touch the stone at her throat. Rosalind approached the wall slowly, her hand hovering over the painted pendant without quite touching it. "This is older than I imagined, older perhaps than written history." Her voice had taken on a scholarly tone, remnant of the educated woman she must have been in her human life. "These figures, they're not symbolic representations. They're us, the first of our kind. Vampires existed before humans recorded history. We've had many names throughout the ages. The Council would have you believe that our origin lies with them, that the 7 elders were the first to discover the transformation from human to immortal." Rosalind's lip curled slightly. "Just another of their self-serving myths." She gestured to the painted figures. "Our kind has existed as long as humans have walked the earth, perhaps longer. We were once revered as gods in some cultures, feared as demons in others." Eliza studied the images more carefully, noting how the blood rivers all seemed to flow toward the pendant. "And this?" she asked, touching the ruby at her throat. "What power does it hold that Lord Blackthorn would kill for it?" Rosalind hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal. Finally, she sighed. "The pendant is called the Heart of Lilith by the Council. According to their law, it was created from the crystallized blood of the first vampire, a woman who made a pact with darker forces to escape death." She moved deeper into the chamber, her fingers tracing the spiraling patterns on the wall. "But these paintings tell a different story. See here, the pendant isn't receiving the blood, it's containing it, controlling it somehow." "Controlling what?" "The hunger." Rosalind turned to face her, eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "That's what the Council fears most. The heart doesn't just hold power, it holds the key to freedom from the bloodthirst that defines our existence." Understanding dawned on Eliza. "That's why you've been able to abstain from human blood. The pendant helps you control the hunger." "Yes," Rosalind admitted. "For centuries the Council has maintained control over our kind through blood dependency. They determine who feeds and where. They use the hunger to ensure obedience." Her voice hardened. "I stole the heart 50 years ago, when I realized what it truly was. I've been hiding from them ever since. And now I wear it," Eliza said, the weight of the revelation settling over her. "Why give it to me? Why not keep it yourself? Rosalind's expression softened, vulnerability flickering across her immortal features. Because I trust you, Eliza. Because in 6 years of service, you showed more humanity than most humans I've encountered in 2 centuries of existence. She looked away. And because I was selfish, I couldn't bear to watch you die. Before Eliza could respond, a new sound reached them, not the howling of bloodhounds, but something more deliberate. Footsteps approaching the cave entrance. Impossible, Rosalind breathed. No one could have tracked us here so quickly. They retreated to the main chamber of the cave, Rosalind drawing a slender dagger from her boot. Not the ornate weapon she'd used against Lord Blackthorn, but deadly nonetheless. Eliza positioned herself slightly behind her maker, still uncertain of her own abilities in a confrontation. A figure appeared at the cave entrance, silhouetted against the pre-dawn light. Tall and gaunt, it moved with the same preternatural grace that Eliza now recognized as the hallmark of their kind. But it wasn't Lord Blackthorn. "Rosalind Thornwick," said a female voice, melodic yet edged with steel. "Still running after all these years?" "Lilith," Rosalind replied, her posture relaxing slightly, though her grip on the dagger remained firm. "I might have known you'd find us." The woman stepped fully into the cave, and Eliza felt a jolt of recognition, though she was certain they'd never met. Her features were striking, high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Her hair, black as midnight, was braided intricately, with small red stones that matched the pendant. "You know, I've always kept watch over the Blackwood stones," Lilith said, moving further into the chamber with liquid grace. "Few of our kind remember these sacred places." Her gaze shifted to Eliza, sharpening with interest. "And who is this, your newest creation?" "My name is Eliza," she answered before Rosalind could speak, surprising herself with her boldness. Lilith's smile revealed teeth as perfect as polished ivory. "She has spirit, this one, and she wears my heart." She extended a hand toward the pendant, but Rosalind stepped between them. "She's under my protection." "Is she?" Lilith arched an elegant eyebrow. "Yet you've brought her to the very place Edmund Blackthorn is most likely to look for you. The Council has not forgotten your connection to these stones." "We had little choice," Rosalind replied. "The bloodhounds were closing in, and dawn approaches." Lilith tilted her head, listening. "Yes, I hear them. Edmund must be truly desperate to release such unpredictable creatures." She gestured toward the deeper passages. "Come. There are chambers below, where not even the hounds will find you." Eliza exchanged a glance with Rosalind, silently questioning whether they should trust this stranger. But Rosalind nodded slightly, following as Lilith led them deeper into the cave system. They descended through narrow passages that spiraled downward, emerging into a larger chamber illuminated by an eerie blue light emanating from crystal formations embedded in the walls. The room was furnished sparsely but comfortably, a writing desk, several bookshelves filled with ancient tomes, and 2 ornate coffins made of dark wood, inlaid with silver. "You live here?" Eliza asked, surprised by the domesticity of the arrangement. "One of several residences I maintain," Lilith replied, moving to a cabinet from which she produced a crystal decanter filled with dark liquid. "I find it convenient to stay close to the stones. They are significant to my personal history." She poured 3 glasses of what Eliza now recognized as blood, richer and darker than the animal blood Rosalind had given her earlier. "Human, freely given," Lilith explained, noting Eliza's hesitation. "I do not hunt as the Council does." Rosalind accepted a glass but didn't drink immediately. "You're taking a risk sheltering us. If Edmund discovers—" "Edmund Blackthorn has been searching for me far longer than he's been hunting you, my dear," Lilith interrupted. "He will not find this place unless I wish it." She sipped from her glass, eyes never leaving the pendant around Eliza's neck. "The more pressing question is why you've chosen now to return north. After 50 years of successful hiding, something must have forced your hand." "The Council grows bolder," Rosalind said. "They've begun eliminating those who question their authority, not just rogue vampires, but entire bloodlines. I feared they would eventually trace my lineage back to my human connections at Thornwick. She glanced at Eliza. I was preparing to leave when circumstances changed. You transformed her without permission, Lilith surmised. A capital offense in the Council's eyes. She studied Eliza with newfound interest. There must be something special about this one to risk such consequences. Eliza felt exposed under Lilith's scrutiny, as if the ancient vampire could see through her newly immortal flesh to the human she had been just days ago. I was just a lady's maid, she said quietly. There's nothing special about me. I wouldn't be so certain, Lilith replied cryptically. She set down her glass and approached Eliza slowly, like one might approach a nervous animal. May I? She asked, hands hovering near the pendant. After a moment's hesitation and a reassuring nod from Rosalind, Eliza nodded. Lilith's cool fingers brushed against her collarbone as she lifted the pendant, examining it in the blue crystal light. It remembers me, she murmured, and indeed, the ruby seemed to pulse more vibrantly at her touch. Though it has bonded to you now. She released the pendant, letting it fall back against Eliza's chest. Fascinating. The heart chooses its bearer carefully. It hasn't accepted a new guardian in over 5 centuries. Guardian? Eliza echoed. I thought it was just a powerful artifact. Lilith's laugh was like distant wind chimes. Oh, it's far more than that. The heart doesn't merely contain power, it is power. The essence of our kind's origin crystallized into physical form. She returned to her glass, lifting it in a mock toast. And now it's chosen you, a newborn vampire who doesn't yet understand what she has become. The irony would be delicious if the stakes weren't so high. Then explain it to me, Eliza demanded, finding courage in frustration. Everyone keeps talking about what this pendant means, but no one will tell me why it matters that I wear it now. Rosalind and Lilith exchanged a long look, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, Rosalind nodded, and Lilith set down her glass with a sigh. Very well, she said, but first you should understand who I am. She gestured to the painted walls. These images are older than human civilization, yet they depict me. I am Lilith, not named after the mythical first vampire, but the source of that myth. Eliza felt a chill run through her that had nothing to do with the cool air of the underground chamber. You're saying you're the first? The original vampire? One of the first, Lilith corrected. There were 7 of us in the beginning, the true elders, not the pretenders who now call themselves the Council. We were humans who discovered something beyond humanity, a transformation triggered by an ancient power that predated even us. She moved to the wall, touching one of the spiraling patterns. The heart was created to contain that power, to regulate it so that our kind could exist without being consumed by the hunger. For thousands of years, we lived in balance, taking only what we needed, giving back through our gifts of healing and protection. Her expression darkened. But as humans multiplied and spread across the earth, some of our kind began to see them as nothing more than livestock. The 7 divided. 3 of us believed in preservation and balance. 3 believed in dominance and subjugation. And the 7th, Eliza asked, remained neutral until forced to choose sides, Lilith replied. A devastating war followed. A conflict that humans recorded in their myths as battles between gods or cosmic forces of good and evil. In truth, it was our kind turning against itself. Rosalind continued the story, her voice distant as if recalling events she'd witnessed rather than learned. The heart was the key to ending the war. It could bind the hungers of all vampires, forcing control upon even the most feral. But using it this way required sacrifice. My sacrifice, Lilith interjected. I bound my essence to the heart, becoming its guardian and prisoner. For millennia I existed within it, conscious but unable to take physical form except under specific circumstances. She gestured to her current body. This is merely a vessel, a projection of what I once was. The true Lilith remains bound to the heart, which is why the Council seeks it so desperately. If they could unlock its full power, they could control every vampire on Earth. Eliza's hand instinctively closed around the pendant. And now I wear it. Why would it choose me? That, Lilith said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, is the question that has brought Edmund Blackthorne and his bloodhounds to our doorstep. As if summoned by her words, a chilling howl echoed through the cave system, closer than before, and accompanied by the sound of claws scrabbling against stone. "They've found the entrance," Rosalind said, moving toward the passage through which they'd entered. Lilith appeared unconcerned. "The lower chambers are protected by barriers they cannot cross." She turned to Eliza, her expression grave. "But now you must make a choice, young one. The heart has chosen you, but you must choose whether to accept its burden." "What choice?" Eliza asked, suddenly afraid. "I don't understand what you're asking." "To become the heart's true guardian is to bond with it completely," Lilith explained. "Your essence would partially merge with mine. You would gain power beyond imagining, and responsibility beyond measure." Another howl, followed by a crash and the sound of splintering wood. The bloodhounds had reached their horses. "We don't have time for this," Rosalind said urgently. "Eliza can't make such a decision without understanding the consequences." "And yet she must," Lilith countered. "The moment Edmund realizes the heart has chosen a new guardian, he will stop at nothing to possess her. The only protection is to complete the bond before he can interfere." "And if I refuse?" Eliza asked. Lilith's dark eyes were bottomless with ancient sorrow. "Then we remove the pendant and face what comes, a battle we are unlikely to survive." The sounds of destruction grew louder, accompanied now by a new sound, a man's voice, commanding and cold. Lord Blackthorne had arrived. "Decide quickly, child," Lilith urged. "Once Edmund breaks through the outer barriers, even I cannot hold him back for long." Eliza looked to Rosalind, seeking guidance, but her maker's face showed only anguish and uncertainty. This choice was hers alone to make. The ruby pendant pulsed against her chest, warm and alive, as if sensing her indecision. Within its depths, Eliza glimpsed something, a vision of power that could liberate their kind from the Council's tyranny, but at a cost that terrified her. To accept would mean surrendering part of her newly found self to something ancient and unknowable, but to refuse might mean death for them all. "What must I do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Lilith's smile was both victorious and sad. She reached out, taking Eliza's hands in her own. "Accept the heart as part of yourself. Open your mind to its essence, to my essence." As their fingers intertwined, the pendant began to glow, its crimson light illuminating the chamber with the color of freshly spilled blood. Eliza gasped as she felt something unfurl within the stone, a presence vast and ancient, reaching toward her consciousness like tendrils of living fire. "Yes," Lilith whispered. "Let it in." The last barrier fell with a sound like thunder, and Lord Blackthorne's voice echoed through the passages, triumphant and terrible. "I know you're here, Rosalind, you and your precious creation." Eliza closed her eyes, feeling the pendant's heat intensify until it seemed to burn through her skin, seeking her immortal heart. As Lilith's essence reached for hers, a sudden clarity pierced her consciousness. This was no simple transfer of power. This was a possession, a consumption of oneself by another. Her eyes flew open, meeting Lilith's dark gaze. "You're not trying to share the heart's power," she accused. "You're trying to take my body as your vessel." Lilith's grip tightened painfully. "After millennia trapped within the stone, can you blame me for seeking freedom? Your form is perfect, newly turned, unclaimed by other powers." "Release her," Rosalind commanded, moving to separate them, but invisible forces held her back. The pendant's glow intensified, spreading across Eliza's chest like veins of living light. She could feel Lilith's essence pushing against the boundaries of her consciousness, seeking entry, ancient, powerful, and desperate for freedom. Lord Blackthorn's footsteps drew nearer, accompanied by the growls of creatures that were neither wolf nor human. They had only moments before he would be upon them. "Help me!" Eliza gasped, her gaze locked with Rosalind's as she fought against Lilith's invasion. "Please!" But even as she pleaded, something within Eliza, perhaps the remnant of her human self, or perhaps something new born of her transformation, rallied against the intrusion. The pendant's light pulsed in rhythm with her resistance, shifting from blood red to a brilliant gold. Lilith's expression contorted in shock. "Impossible," she hissed. "No one has ever—" Her words cut off as the golden light enveloped them both. Eliza felt rather than saw the passage open before them, not a physical door, but a rift in reality itself, leading to someplace beyond the cave, beyond the pursuit of Lord Blackthorn and his bloodhounds. "Quickly," Rosalind urged, her hand finding Eliza's and pulling her toward the rift. "We must go now!" As they stepped through the golden doorway, Eliza caught one last glimpse of Lilith's face, rage and fear warring across features that were already becoming insubstantial, the vessel she'd created unable to maintain its form without the heart's power. "This isn't over," Lilith's voice echoed, fading as the rift began to close. "What is mine will return to me. What you are becoming, child, is beyond your comprehension." The last thing Eliza saw before the portal sealed was Lord Blackthorn bursting into the chamber, his face a mask of fury as he realized his prize was escaping. His eyes, crimson with rage, met hers across the diminishing gap, a promise of pursuit that transcended physical boundaries. Then the rift closed completely, and they were falling through golden light, the heart of Lilith burning against Eliza's chest with a fire that was neither painful nor pleasant, but transformative, changing her into something that was neither human nor vampire, but something the world had not seen for millennia. The golden light dissipated like morning mist, and Eliza found herself standing beside Rosalind on a windswept cliff overlooking a churning sea. The night sky above them was studded with stars, their brilliance undimmed by any nearby city's glow. The pendant against her chest had cooled, but continued to pulse with a steady golden rhythm that matched her own heartbeat, or what would have been her heartbeat had she still been human. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice nearly lost in the roar of waves crashing against the rocks below. Rosalind looked around, her expression a mixture of wonder and trepidation. "The cliffs of Moher, Ireland." She touched the stone beneath their feet reverently. "I haven't been here in over a century. The heart has brought us to another place of power, one sacred to our kind long before humans built their monasteries here." Eliza looked down at the pendant, now glowing with a softer light. "I didn't direct it anywhere. It acted on its own." "Not entirely on its own," Rosalind corrected gently. "The heart responds to need, to desire. Some part of you must have called for sanctuary, and it answered." They moved away from the cliff's edge, finding shelter in a small hollow where the wind's bite lessened. Rosalind sat on a flat stone, her immortal features etched with exhaustion that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. "You resisted Lilith," she said after a long silence. "No one has ever done that before." "I felt what she intended," Eliza replied, her fingers caressing the ruby's smooth surface. "She didn't want to share her power. She wanted to consume me, to use my body as her vessel while my consciousness was extinguished. And yet the heart rejected her claim in favor of yours." Rosalind's eyes reflected the golden glow of the pendant. "Do you understand what that means?" Eliza shook her head. Though the pendant continued its rhythmic pulsing, Lilith's presence had withdrawn, leaving only echoes of ancient memories too vast and strange for her to fully comprehend. "It means the heart has truly chosen you, not as a temporary bearer, but as its rightful guardian." Rosalind leaned forward, her voice intense. "In all the centuries since Lilith bound herself to the heart, it has never transferred allegiance so completely. You did not just resist her possession, you claimed the heart's power as your own." The weight of this revelation settled over Eliza like a mantle. "But I don't know how to use such power. I barely understand what I've become." None of us do, not truly. A sad smile touched Rosalind's lips. Even those of us who have lived for centuries are still discovering the limits and possibilities of our existence. She rose gracefully, moving to stand beside Eliza. But we now have something the Council has feared for millennia, a new guardian of the heart, uncorrupted by their influence and unbound by their ancient feuds. Lord Blackthorn will still hunt us, Eliza reminded her. And now Lilith as well. Yes. Rosalind's gaze turned toward the eastern horizon, where the faintest lightning suggested approaching dawn. But not today. We need rest and sanctuary. She led Eliza away from the cliffs, following a narrow path that wound between ancient stones, marked with spiraling symbols, similar to those in the cave beneath the Blackwood stones. After nearly an hour's walk, they reached a small cottage nestled in a grove of twisted trees. Despite its apparent age, the building showed no signs of decay, its thatched roof neat, its stone walls solid. "Another of your secret residences?" Eliza asked as Rosalind produced a key from within her bodice. "One of the oldest." She unlocked the heavy wooden door. "I established safe houses across Europe centuries ago, places where our kind could shelter when persecuted. Few remember them now, which makes them all the safer." The cottage's interior was simple but comfortable. A large hearth, a table with chairs, and several doors leading to what Eliza presumed were bedchambers. Most importantly, the windows were covered with heavy shutters that would block the killing light of day. "We should be safe here while we determine our next course of action," Rosalind said, closing and bolting the door behind them. "The protections on this place are ancient and strong." But even as she spoke, Eliza felt a strange vibration from the pendant, not the steady rhythm of before, but an erratic pulsing like a warning. "Something's wrong," she murmured, her hand rising instinctively to touch the ruby. Rosalind stiffened, her preternatural senses extending beyond the cottage walls. "Impossible," she whispered. "No one could have followed us through the rift." A soft laugh emanated from the shadows of the cottage's farthest corner. "Not through your golden doorway, no. But there are other paths between worlds for those who know the old ways." Lord Blackthorn stepped into the dim light of the cottage's single candle. He looked different somehow, his features sharper, his eyes blazing with an intensity that made Eliza step back involuntarily. Behind him, darker shadows moved with predatory grace, bloodhounds in their more humanoid form, their eyes gleaming red in the darkness. "Edmund," Rosalind's voice was steady, though Eliza could sense her maker's fear. "How did you find us?" He smiled, revealing fangs longer and more pronounced than Eliza remembered. "Did you think Lilith was the only one with secrets?" He gestured to a silver ring on his right hand, set with a black stone that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "The Council has artifacts of its own, ways of tracking the heart no matter where it flees." His gaze shifted to Eliza, the hunger in his eyes unmistakable. "So this is the vessel Lilith failed to claim. A mere servant girl, newly turned, yet somehow worthy of the heart's allegiance." He took a step closer, nostrils flaring. "I can smell her essence on you, child. Fragments of Lilith clinging to your aura like cobwebs." "Stay back," Eliza warned, the pendant pulsing more rapidly against her skin. "Or what?" Lord Blackthorn's smile widened. "You don't yet understand the power you carry. You can no more wield the heart's full strength than a child can lift a mountain." His voice dropped to a seductive purr. "But I can teach you. Together, we could reshape the very nature of our existence." "You mean enslave our kind to the Council's will?" Rosalind interjected, moving to stand between them. "The heart was created to liberate us from the blood hunger, not as a tool for control." Liberation, control, such limited perspectives. Lord Blackthorn circled them slowly, his movements liquid and predatory. "The heart is the key to evolution, Rosalind. With it, we could transcend the limitations that have bound us for millennia." As he spoke, Eliza felt something stir within the pendant, not Lilith's presence, but something deeper and more primal. Ancient memories, not her own, flooded her consciousness. Visions of the first vampires, their transformation from human to immortal, the terrible beauty of their awakening power. She saw the war Lilith had described, not a simple conflict between good and evil, but a complex struggle for the future of a nascent species. And she saw Lord Blackthorn as he had been then, not Edmund Blackthorn, a name he had adopted centuries later, but Azrael, the neutral elder who had eventually sided with those seeking dominance over humanity. He had been beautiful once, his immortality untainted by cruelty. Now corruption festered behind his perfect features, the result of millennia spent feeding on fear as much as blood. "I see you," Eliza said, her voice resonating with power that surprised even her. "Azrael, the betrayer, you who turned against your own kind for the promise of greater power." Lord Blackthorn froze, shock replacing the confidence in his expression. "How could you possibly—" He stopped, his gaze fixing on the pendant, which now blazed with golden fire. "The heart is showing you visions, lies and half-truths meant to turn you against me." "Not lies," Rosalind said softly, understanding dawning on her face. "Memories. The heart holds the collective memory of our kind, a history unfiltered by the Council's revisions." Lord Blackthorn's composure cracked, rage distorting his features into something monstrous. "Enough of this!" He gestured to the bloodhounds. "Take her! Kill the other!" As the creatures lunged forward, Eliza acted on instinct, the pendant's fire spreading from her chest to envelop her entire body. She felt no fear, only a profound connection to the power flowing through her. Not Lilith's power, but something more fundamental, the very essence of their immortal nature. "No!" she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of millennia. The bloodhounds faltered, whining like scolded pets, then sank to the floor in supplication. Lord Blackthorn's eyes widened in disbelief. "Impossible! The Council bound them to obey only the true elders." Eliza finished for him. "The heart recognizes me as one now." She stepped forward, golden light streaming from her like solar flares. "Your deception ends here, Azrael. The time of the false council is over." For the first time, fear flickered across Lord Blackthorn's immortal features. He backed away, reaching for a weapon concealed within his coat. "You understand nothing of the forces you're challenging. The Council maintains order. Without us, chaos would consume both vampire and human alike." "The Council maintains its own power," Rosalind countered, moving to stand beside Eliza. "You've twisted the natural order, using blood dependency to control our kind, while harvesting humans like cattle." Lord Blackthorn drew a silver dagger etched with symbols that made the heart pulse painfully against Eliza's chest. "Then die with your principles intact," he snarled, lunging toward Eliza with preternatural speed. The attack came too quickly for conscious thought. Eliza felt the heart's power surge through her, instinctively creating a shield of golden energy that stopped the blade inches from her throat. Lord Blackthorn strained against the invisible barrier, his face contorted with effort and rage. "You cannot kill me," he hissed. "I am Azrael, elder of the Council, immortal among immortals." "I don't need to kill you," Eliza replied, the heart's knowledge flowing through her mind like a river of liquid gold. "Only to bind you, as Lilith once bound herself to the heart." She reached out, her hand passing through the barrier to touch Lord Blackthorn's forehead. At the contact, his body went rigid, the dagger clattering to the floor. The golden light surrounded him, penetrating his immortal flesh, illuminating him from within until his skin appeared translucent. "No," he gasped, true fear replacing arrogance in his eyes. "Not this. Anything but this." "Justice," Eliza whispered, feeling the heart's power draw something essential from Lord Blackthorn's essence, not his life force or his immortality, but the corruption that had festered within him for millennia. It flowed into the pendant, which absorbed it like a sponge soaking up spilled wine. Lord Blackthorn collapsed to his knees, his body suddenly looking frailer, more human. The bloodhounds whimpered and retreated, their connection to their master severed by his transformation. "What have you done to me?" he demanded, his voice stripped of its commanding power. "Cleansed you," Eliza answered, the golden light receding back into the pendant. "The heart has removed the corruption that twisted your nature, returning you to what you were before your betrayal." Rosalind approached cautiously, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. "Eliza, how did you know how to do that?" "I didn't," she admitted. "The heart acted through me." She looked down at the pendant, now glowing with a steady, peaceful light. "It contains not just power but wisdom, the accumulated knowledge of our kind since the beginning." She knelt before Lord Blackthorn, who stared at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "You have a choice now, Azrael. Remain as you are, immortal but purified of the corruption that drove you to cruelty, or face final death for your crimes against both human and vampire." He looked up at her, his eyes no longer burning with hatred, but filled with the confusion of one awakening from a long, dark dream. "Who are you to offer such judgment?" "The heart's chosen," Rosalind answered for her, reverence in her voice. "The guardian our kind has awaited since the first sundering." Dawn was approaching. Eliza could feel it in the subtle heaviness of her limbs, the primal warning in her immortal blood. "We don't have much time," she said, rising to her feet. "The sun comes, and we must decide our path forward." Lord Blackthorn, Azrael, remained on his knees, his immortal pride broken by the heart's cleansing. "The council will send others when I don't return. They will never stop hunting the heart. Then we will meet them as we met you," Eliza replied with quiet confidence. "One by one, if necessary, until our kind is freed from their tyranny." She turned to Rosalind, reaching for her maker's hand. "But we won't face them alone." As their fingers intertwined, the heart's light enveloped them both, creating a connection deeper than maker and progeny, more profound than mistress and servant. In that golden radiance, Eliza saw the truth of her feelings for Rosalind, a love that had been growing since long before her transformation, now freed from the constraints of their former stations. "No," Rosalind agreed softly, her eyes reflecting the heart's glow and her own awakening emotions. "Not alone, never again." They secured Azrael in one of the cottage's inner chambers, warding the door with symbols drawn from the heart's ancient knowledge. The bloodhounds, freed from his corrupting influence, slunk away into the pre-dawn shadows, returning to the wild nature they had possessed before the council's perversion. As the first deadly rays of sunlight touched the horizon, Eliza and Rosalind retreated to the cottage's safest chamber, a room without windows, its walls lined with the same protective symbols that had decorated the cave beneath the blackwood stones. "What happens now?" Rosalind asked as they settled into the darkness that would shelter them through the daylight hours. The heart pulsed gently against Eliza's chest, its golden glow illuminating the space between them. Within its depths, she glimpsed possibilities, a future where vampires existed in balance with humans, their hunger controlled not through deprivation or torment, but through the heart's benevolent power. She saw herself and Rosalind traveling across continents, gathering allies, challenging the council's outposts one by one until the false elders were forced to confront the truth of their corruption. And beyond that, she glimpsed something else, a peace she had never known as human or vampire, found in Rosalind's arms as they weathered the centuries together. "Now," Eliza replied, drawing Rosalind closer until their foreheads touched, the heart's light enfolding them like a cocoon, "we begin." As day claimed the world outside, they sealed their new covenant with a kiss that tasted of blood and promise and liberation. The first step on a journey that would reshape the destiny of their kind for all eternity.